In the previous session, I was manipulating lighting with the objective of being able to get a more clear visual of the Mandelbulb design that I was working on. Now, turning our attention to what we have currently after our lighting adjustments, I have a graphic here which I don't really like. We're not quite there yet, and I'll tell you why I don't really like it. The detail is lost in this area. There's too much, for my taste, there's just too much area of the graphic that has been lost to just mud. It doesn't visually mean anything. And this does not contribute to the story of the image. So I want to work on this. All right, I want to work on this. I also, I don't think, this is not quite where I want to be in the foreground. It's interesting, but the pattern repeats too much for my taste. All right, what I like to do with the Mandelbulb, and this is true with photography as well, but I'm only speaking for myself. What I like to do with, all right, I'll call it imagery, whether it be photography or digital art or artificial landscapes or whatever you want to do, whatever you want to call imagery. What I like to do is to make it interesting where the viewer understands its story. I'm not really into completely random graphics, abstracts. I mean, you know, I'll make them. They're pretty interesting. What I tend to do with the Mandelbulb3D fractal art is I tend to want the Mandelbulb scene. I want it to kind of like tell a story. That story could be all different kinds of things. I want the viewer of the image or the animation to feel like that they're in an environment that could be real, could be. It's like sort of like believable. All right, but yet odd enough where it's like, wow, you know, where is that place? You know, I want the viewer to say, you know, I could almost believe that a place like that exists, although we know better. Now, if I pick up a digital camera or a film camera and I go out and I take a shot of a landscape, well, that's believable, all right, because human beings understand what a field looks like with trees and weed and clouds in the sky. They understand that. They've seen it. So they have an association of the image to what they have seen before. Fractal graphics are sort of different. They haven't seen it before, right, because it doesn't exist in reality, and yet it's sort of understandable, and we can get that understanding into our images by using perspective, by using shadowing, by using a light positioning, by the details are interesting and almost look like they could be defined, but not quite. So I like fractal art because it's believable, but not believable. Now, I don't really know what that means, but let's take a look at our graphic here. Now, the center area isn't doing anything. It's not supporting It's not supporting the statement. This top area here is inconsistent with the lower area. It's not contributing either. The the perspective is interesting, okay, but the perspective is off to the side. It's off to the our left, and so the viewer isn't traveling down that particular perspective. They're traveling sort of like parallel to it. All right, now it's more dramatic if the viewer is traveling along the perspective than beside it. So I don't really like the fact that the vanishing point is off center to the left here. I don't really care for that. It's not really telling me the story. Now what's interesting is, I don't know if you can quite see it on your screen or not, but we have some depth here. There is, like down in here, you could almost see that there's something else at a lower level. Now that could be quite interesting and quite useful in this whole thing. So I don't like the position that the camera is in this particular scene. I don't like the dead center area. I don't like that, and I don't like this top part here that just seems to be muddled. So this needs work. Well, let's see what we can do about it. All right, so I'm just going to push it over to the navigator just to be sure that I've got it. This is interesting. When I pulled it over to the navigator, it also pulled over the light, or the light settings that I had done here. Now the navigator is rendering the image differently at a lower resolution. All right, and so we don't expect the navigator, and we don't want the navigator to fully render all of this because it'll just take too much time. And if I try to move through a scene that renders out to this quality all the time, well, it's just, I'm going to be sitting here waiting for every time I make a step, forward or left or right or whatever, I got to sit here and listen to this thing to crank on and re-render. I don't want that. So I'm okay with a lower resolution rendering. I can kind of help that by using my lighting. All right, and that gives me a sense of where I'm positioned within the scene, but yet I don't have to sit around waiting for the rendering to draw all the time. All right, let's see what we can do about this. Okay, so I don't like the vanishing point offset here. I don't like I don't like all this lost detail in here, and I don't like this top area. So what am I going to work on first? I always work on the graphic, the object itself first, and then I go for position. And it's quite simple why I follow that particular design route. If I get my position just exactly where I want it, and then I go change the formula, I change the design, the way the Mandelbulb 3D environment works, I could all of a sudden I could have a Mandelbulb that goes from this to this, and my position is no good for this. All right, so I go for the graphic design first, position second. If we need to carry on a little bit here, I go for lighting first, coloring next, or coloring after lighting. Let's work on the detail a little bit here. All right, so I know that I'm going to be working here in my my three formulas. I have my amazing box, my first one iteration. I have my A box vary scale, one iteration. I have my second amazing box, one iteration. Okay. Now I know from previous sessions where we were changing the formulas here, I know that my A box vary scale will make some very dramatic changes. And that's where I'm going to focus my attention for a minute here. I'm going to put this on minimum because I don't want to get carried away with huge changes, because I feel that I'm close to a usable Mandelbulb 3D scene. All right, so I'm gonna adjust the scale here. Like I say, I'm only just trying to I'm trying to create details that I'm impressed with. Let's come down to R power. Let's see what that does for us. All right, it's not really helping us much here, is it? I'm going to reset that value. Here's my vary scale. Okay. Okay. Interesting. I got something happening up here which is interesting. Not a whole lot of change down here. This gap is widened up a little bit. Let me push that to main. Take a look at it. Interesting. Not a whole lot of difference, but I think it's going in the right direction. Let's end this session, and in the next session I'm going to continue to adjust the formulas, looking for a fractal, a Mandelbulb fractal environment or scene that I like. So I'll see you in the next session.